Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to Salesbuildr TV. I'm here at CompTIA ChannelCon in Atlanta, talking to some interesting people around the event, and I've got with me a fascinating man, Shawn Walsh from Encore Strategic. Shawn, how are you doing?
Fantastic, thank you for having me.
More than welcome. And so the reason I grabbed you today is I saw you did a talk, didn't you, earlier on, which sounded really interesting. It's kind of in our area.
Yep.
Perhaps you could tell everyone a little bit about what that talk was. Give us a bit of a feel for it.
Sure. So we did Pumpkin Plan Your MSP, and I am the co-author with my business partner Dave Cava.
Getting the plug in already.
I'm getting my shameless plug in. Right. It is about sales, right?
Of course, I like it.
The Pumpkin Plan for the Managed Service Provider, and this is what they call a derivative book. So it is based on the original Pumpkin Plan, if you recognize the title, by Mike Michalowicz. Mike and I became very good friends a few years ago. I was speaking at ASCII, and Mike, I was the speaker right before Mike went on. So we got to know each other through that series of talks. And Mike had people writing derivative books from his other book that's well known called Profit First. And we got talking, and Mike actually got his start in the IT industry. And that was his first company. So he said, I think it would be great timing for somebody to do a derivative book of the Pumpkin Plan. And so he asked Dave and I to write the first derivative of the Pumpkin Plan. And that's where the Pumpkin Plan for Managed Service Providers came from. And the book is about 15% from the original Pumpkin Plan, and the other 85% is from our experience working with MSPs all over the world, our peer groups, and also just from Dave and myself, our struggles in running our businesses and the mistakes that we made and the things that we recovered from and the pain points that we had. And both of us got to a point where we had very successful exits from our companies, but sometimes in spite of ourselves. So really the book is a way for us to give back to the community. Tell
the audience then. So for those who maybe aren't familiar with the Pumpkin Plan at all, where's the sort of the tangible nuggets? Let's drill it down to what are the key points of interest, especially in the sales sphere.
Absolutely. So where does the name come from? The Pumpkin Plan comes from the fact that Mike came up with a theory that growing your business is like how pumpkin farmers who grow the giant pumpkins at shows. He was at a fair with his kids, and he got talking to this person who grew these gigantic pumpkins. And the person explained the process to him. And the idea is when you're trying to grow a giant pumpkin, the pumpkins are very greedy on resources. And on the vine, you might have multiple pumpkins. And you have to keep an eye on which ones really have the potential to grow, and you got to be willing to cut the ones that don't. And as MSPs, we spend a lot of time working with clients that just drive us crazy. They argue over invoices. They don't take our advice. They try to say, oh, I'll take this, but I won't take that.
Why do we work with those? How do we end up working with customers?
Because we're afraid of losing revenue. And the reality is, if we drop those clients and we focus on the clients who fit our A-list client avatar, we're going to make more money focusing on the right clients than we are taking money from anybody.
Who's the right client? Give us an example. How did you come up with an A-list avatar?
So you have to come up with your A-list client avatar, because the symbol, in the simplest terms, an A-list client is one that matches with your core values. We talk a lot about core values. I'm a big believer in it. It needs to be more than a marketing piece. When you're hiring your team, you should be hiring people based on core values, but you should also be looking at your clients and seeing, do they align with it? And then the other part of it is knowing who your clients are. On your A-list clients, do they have a common industry? Are you serving a specific vertical? What is their demographics? Okay, we're all good at the demographics. That's filling in the fields on the CRM.
Yeah.
But what we fail to do often as MSPs is think about the psychographics. And the psychographics are a little fuzzier. And it's, what are your clients' interests? Who do they support? Who do they donate money to? because that's where you want to be putting your ads.
So what
are they passionate about?
How does that become relevant? How do you use that information? Because it's very easy to collect information like that and then not use it.
Because it helps you make an emotional attachment. And you know what? I don't care what anybody says. We don't buy on logic. People buy on emotion. They justify it with logic. And you have to understand what is important to that person, and you have to find where the alignment is. Now, once you have that A-list client avatar, the other thing on your A-list client is it's the person who'll pay your price and use your stack. Okay, you cannot be going into clients who say, well, I'm going to take these 7 products in your stack, but I don't want these other 3 over here, and I want you to use this antivirus and this backup. No, they take your whole stack. You're the IT expert.
Why is that important?
Because it's the only way to scale. You can't scale your business if you're not supporting the same stack and you have documented, repeatable process. When somebody throws a product that your team doesn't know into the mix and expects you to support it, you've got this one client, and many times multiple clients, who are in different areas, who are using different products. It's much harder for your client to support it. You don't gain the efficiencies, and in turn, you don't get the profitability. So that is something that you really need to be very adamant about. They have to be willing to take your stack and stop negotiating. Stop, you know what, your price is your price. If they're not willing to pay it, walk away. And our clients say, oh my God, if I don't do that, I'll lose business. Great, you're gonna lose the business you should be losing. I'll tell a little story with a little color to it. So many years ago, Dave, my business partner Dave, and I were in a peer group together when we were still MSPs, and somebody was complaining, I got this client, they're not using my backup, they pay late, my team cringes every time the phone rings. And Dave stood up, he said, stop right there. He said, at my company, we have a simple rule. Clients get to be cheap or a pain in the ass. They don't get to be both. So basically, pumpkin planning your clients is getting rid of the cheap pains in the asses.
Yes, okay.
We have a tool that if you read the book, we have a website where you can access resources. And we have a spreadsheet that people should be filling out. And you look at the profitability of the client.
Yeah. And
then we rate them in several categories. But things like, do they pay on time? Cringeworthiness. Does your team, like working with them or not? Are they abusive to your team?
Yeah.
You fill in all those things so they get a profitability grade, they get a letter grade. If the profit's low, or sometimes it's you're losing money on them because they take up so much of your time, and they have a low letter grade, you fire them. Those are the ones you cut immediately.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a client that's profitable, they're not profitable, but they have a good letter grade, then those are the ones you go have a conversation with and say, you know what, we really like working with you. We like the relationship. We feel you align with our core values. But unfortunately, we're not making a profit. And as you know, as a business person, we have to make a profit to stay in business. So we're going to have to raise your rates. I just worked with a company that last year lost a fairly significant amount of money. And we went through and we did the analysis. And we found 10 clients that they needed, in some cases, to quadruple the monthly payment.
Wow.
I don't think there was one that was less than double. Everything was at least double and up. And of those 10, there were 2 of them that were junk clients. It was not a good relationship, but he wanted to talk to him anyhow. I said, all right, give it a shot. He went out, he presented the thing, and like we expected, the 8 businesses that had good relationships, several of them looked at him and basically said, we were wondering how long it was going to take you to raise your rates.
Actually expecting it.
And every one of them signed. And the 2 that we told them, you know what, these aren't even worth going to bat for, he actually got into an argument and fired one on the spot because because they started arguing with him. And
but it takes some confidence to do that, doesn't it? But
that's the thing. And he was shocked that how many said yes. And I have seen this time and time again. That company is now on track this year to have their best year ever and making a significant industry standard profit for the first time.
I love that. Right, so that's a brilliant segue then. So we've got that. We've got get rid of your bad clients, the ones that are hemorrhaging the cash.
Yep.
So of those companies, so you work with a whole number of MSPs, and they are very aware, and they actually measure themselves based on their operational maturity levels.
Yep.
So of the better performing ones then, what are the next steps in terms of, particularly in terms of the sort of sales approach they take to make sure they are at that upper profitability level?
So one of the things we talk about in the book is a concept called the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is, if you do a Venn diagram of circles, you have the intersection of what your A-list client looks like, so knowing that client avatar that we talked about.
Yeah.
But also knowing, what are you uniquely good at? What is your differentiator in the marketplace? What do you do differently from your competitors? And you know, I should have brought my water jug with me, but in the MSP industry, I often hear, I can't differentiate. You know, we do the same thing as everybody else.
What's the answer to that?
You know,
I hear that too.
I can't. I finally say no, none of that. I'm not listening to you anymore. All right. The examples I give are, I have a can of water over on my table. It's called Liquid Death. Okay. Have you ever seen Liquid Death?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
what is Liquid Death?
Strong branding, basically.
But what's in the can?
It's sugary water, effectively.
No, it's plain water.
Oh, is it?
It's plain old water.
Oh,
It
okay.
is just water. They took water, they put it into an aluminum can, they gave it a fancy labeling. Sudden Death is $3 a can, and it sits right next to Dasani or any other bottled water in a plastic bottle that goes for 89 cents. It's the same water. What they've done is they've changed the experience. Now, there's two main factors in how they differentiate.
Yeah.
Number one, they went, initially they said, we're being environmentally conscious because aluminum is much easier to recycle than plastic, and it doesn't put plastic into the ecosystem. I'm a scuba diver instructor. I love getting rid of plastic.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But that's not the place where they're really making the difference. The real differentiator is when I'm at the neighborhood barbecue, and I'm standing there with a plastic bottle of water. Everybody goes, "What? You're drinking water? Oh, go get a beer. Go get what? Why you're not drinking?" Social pressure. If I'm standing there with my $3 can of Sudden Death, nobody notices because it looks like a craft beer can.
Right, I love that. How translate that to an MSP though, because that's
It's just, but it's that simple. It's water. It's the same thing everybody else has. They just changed the branding. So I'm sitting here with you. You are wearing a logo shirt, and I'm sitting here in a suit and a bow tie. Okay, this is my Sudden Death. In my MSP, I focused on law firms. And one day I was at a client, and a lawyer who always wore a bow tie, this is my tip of the hat
very
to
nice
him.
It is too.
Thank you. But he looked at me, he said, "You obviously sell to lawyers, right?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, of course. I'm here. We specialize in IT for law firms."
I mean, MSPs, it's...
Right. He said, he looked at me and said, "Then why, if you're trying to sell to lawyers, why do you look like one of your engineers?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Lawyers have big egos, and they are going to look down on somebody who's not dressed like them, or that they don't feel is up to their speed. And that, so he said, you need to go and dress like a lawyer." He goes, stop wearing a logo shirt and khakis and start wearing a suit and tie. And you know what? I never went on another sales call without a suit and tie, and you know what happened? Our close rate went up, and the price per seat went up.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
I mean, so this is it. It's the pack. All I did was change the packaging.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, the other thing was, I went in and I stopped talking about speeds and feeds, and I said, here's how this is going to affect your business process. But those two things, when I walked in, it was a very different conversation that I had with the attorney, and the perception by the attorney was very different than when the other MSPs came in.
I'm guessing you're a fan of niching down, are you? Is that what you did in your business?
I did, not as much as my partner did. I came from a law enforcement background, IT security. I used to teach computer crime investigation. I was the head of a detective division. We did computer crime.
Fantastic. We'll keep that for another episode.
Yep. So my company did law firms, medical practices, and financial services. So we were anybody who needed a security and compliance obligation.
Okay. Yeah.
My business partner actually niched down where they just did IT for hedge funds in New York City. Every client was within 2 blocks of their office. And you know, when we sold, we got a multiple of about 8x, which is very, very decent for a generalist MSP. My partner's multiple was 19. So, because he was niched down and they came to him as a strategic acquisition because they wanted an MSP that specifically did IT
Is that
services.
common? Is that a common thing? Does that make you more attractive?
It can be, yes, because you go from a financial purchase to a strategic purchase. So if you can put yourself out there in a way that you are now attractive to a strategic buyer, then your multiple can go up significantly.
Fascinating. That's really interesting. So it's not just a growth tactic. It's actually for potentially acquisition at the end of the road. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, the other thing we were talking about on the sales side in that is that we tell a story when we do our talk on the book, in that when most MSPs go in and sell, they go in and they are talking to the prospect and they're saying, hey, you know, I'm going to give you 24/7 monitoring, and the prospect's agreeing with them, saying, yeah, I absolutely need that. And we're going to give you this great firewall to keep the bad guys out. And the prospect's saying, yeah,
look at all my shiny things. Look at all my shiny things.
Right.
I've got
and
the
you're
tools.
talking the technology, and our techs, they only speak English. They're not going to use technical talk for you. And your prospect is like, yeah, that's fantastic. I need that too. And you walk out and you're thinking, I got this. This money's in the bank. You're pulling out of the parking lot. You're doing a fist bump. And then you get back to the office and nothing happens.
Yeah.
And days go by and you hear nothing.
And why would that be?
And you call the prospect and it turns out they went with somebody else. Why did that happen? Because when you were pulling out of the parking lot doing your fist bump, the prospect went through the other 3 proposals they had on their desk. They go, okay, that MSP said the same exact thing that the other 3 did, and therefore I can safely go with the low bidder. They didn't differentiate themselves. You need to come in, what you want is to have, you don't want the prospect agreeing with you. If they're agreeing with you, you have not told them anything new.
Okay, how should the conversation go then? How would you structure it?
The conversation should go with, you want the prospect to cock their head and go, huh, nobody's ever put that way before. Nobody's ever told me that. Now you've educated them. Now you have created a blue ocean strategy where you're taking price off the table because you're offering something unique.
Are there any particular questions that you would ask in that scenario? So we talked about how you might differentiate just in the way you are, perhaps niching, whatever it might be. Any sort of good questions in that sort of, it's not even pitching, is it? It's the discovery phase. Any particular questions you would ask? Is it very open-ended, or is it around the business goals?
Well, first of all, always be asking open-ended questions. Don't go in. So many people do the show up and throw up thing.
Yes.
And it's all speeds and feeds.
Yeah.
Do your homework. Do some research on your prospect. Go in and go in and talk about their business. Talk about how technology affects their bottom line. The line that I've used for years is you have to stop having server room conversations and start having boardroom conversations.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do, is it? To ask those right questions.
Human nature. We talk about what we're comfortable with.
Yeah. And
we're comfortable with technology. We got to start being comfortable getting uncomfortable. So learn how to talk business, learn how to talk. The bottom line is we go in and we talk about what we're good at. They don't care.
Yeah.
All they care about is the end result. Go in and talk about, this is how I am going to make your life easier. This is what's in it for you.
Yeah, that's so important. So Shawn, what I didn't do was ask you to complete your sweet spot. So there's 3 parts to it. So there was the A-list, there was the differentiation, and then the last part is
systematization.
Right, okay, why is that important?
So as an MSP, you need to systematize everything. And you have to have documented, repeatable process. That is the key to scaling any business, not just MSPs. So many business owners keep so much stuff in their head. We hire a new employee and we go, hey, you're smart, you'll figure it out. Get out there and take care of the client.
Yeah.
And then we get upset when they don't take care of the client the way we did. So when we wrote this book, we decided to do a little research, and we went back to the original Pumpkin plan, and we looked at the Amazon reviews on the book, and we flipped the script, and of course it's more fun to look at the reviews, the lowest ones first.
Of course.
And we saw a review by a guy that I refer to as Book Review Guy.
Right.
And what he said is, oh my God, this is just another book written by a business consultant who doesn't know how to run a business. The only way that you can get ahead as a business owner is to work more hours, work harder, and you have to take care of everything because your employees will never take care of a client as good as you can.
Sounds like sound advice.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, man, you're going to wind up divorced, your kids are going to hate you, and you're probably going to drop dead at a client site, and hopefully it's in the...
It's a one-way ticket.
Well, hopefully he drops dead in the server room where at least the air conditioning will be on and the body won't smell.
Yeah, well.
So we kind of wrote the book from the perspective of we felt bad for Book Review Guy.
Yeah.
And the thing is, as an entrepreneur, there is what I call the double-edged sword of entrepreneurship. We make it to about $1 million in revenue by pure gut, because we can do everything in our business. We can sell, we can do the tech work, we can do the bookkeeping. That's what gets us to the point of success where we can live comfortably.
Yeah.
The problem is we stop at about 1.5 million and we never get past it because we are still doing everything in the business. And everything has to go through us.
Is that a typical area? Is it around about that mark where you do
right
sort of, you plateau? Right,
yeah.
Interesting.
So, we call it the hub and spoke. Everything goes through the owner. You need to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Your job as the owner is to be working on the business eventually 100% of the time and working in the business 0% of the time. Mike McAllowitz, when we were chatting with Mike about writing the book, he made a comment to me that really stuck. And he said, if you're an entrepreneur and you're working in your business, you're stealing a job from somebody. Because if you're an entrepreneur, your job is to create jobs. It's not to do the jobs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you need to have that documented, repeatable process and that systemization to make sure that your staff can do the job as good as if you were there. And I got news for you. If you hire the right team and you train them properly, they'll do it better than you.
Hard to take, but it's a very solid piece of wisdom.
When I sold my company, they handed it over to my team to run, and everything went so smooth. And I looked at my former COO. I said, I knew I was replaceable. I just didn't think it would be that easy. But that's where you need to get to. And if anything is going through you, you need to be looking at that process and going, how do I get out of this? And that'll be like rocket fuel on your business.
I love that. Shawn, that seems like a fantastic place to end. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope we can have some more of these. I think
absolutely.
We've only scratched the surface
I will be in the UK actually speaking at 2 events.
Please feel free to do a plug.
So folks, please come and see. We will, myself and Dave will be speaking at the Halo event coming up in September, and we will be at the CompTIA
EMEACon. Yeah, fantastic. We'll see you there.
And we'll be there. So come and see us. I might have a free book or two, and would love to chat.
I look forward to seeing you there and having another chat very soon. Thank you, Shawn. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.